Zooming in or live streaming in or later watch the council meeting, the meeting will be live streamed and recorded and available on the internet by visiting the Town of Parry Sound's website at www.parrysound.ca. So this meeting is via Zoom video conferencing, and there was Town of Parry Sound's website. There was no closed meeting tonight, so is there any additions or prioritization of the agenda? Actually, I do have one to begin with, item 931. We have Giselle Bodkin in the waiting room from BDO to answer any questions that we might have with regard to the draft financial statements for the town. So any other items that need to be brought forward or additions? Nope. Okay. May I have a mover and seconder for the agenda as amended? Councillor McCann, Councillor Borneman. The council agenda for July 21st, 2020 be approved as amended. Anyone opposed to that? Nope. Okay, that's carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Nope. Okay. Mover and seconder for the minutes. Councillor Bachman and Councillor Burden, that the minutes from the regular council meeting held July 7th, 2020 be approved as circulated. Any discussion on those minutes? Nope. Anyone opposed to those minutes? Nope, that's carried. We have a mover and seconder for the special council meeting minutes. Councillor Keith and Councillor McCann. The minutes of the special council meeting held July 13th, 2020 be approved as circulated. Any discussion on those minutes? No? Okay. Any opposed to it? Nope, that's carried then. Questions for staff? Councillor McCann.
Thank you. Just a quick question for Mr. Kearns. Just wondering what the construction at the corner of Seguin and Bowes, Great North Road was there. I'm just curious or nosy, I guess, what was going on there this past little while.
Sure. Through you, your worship. Actually, that is Lakeland. That's their project. So they're in the process of running some infrastructure underground using directional boring and some other excavation methods to run that cabling.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councillor Borneman and then Councillor Keith.
So my question's for Mr. Harris. Clayton, it appears that the new OPP station is, quickly, the construction phase is quickly coming to some sort of completion. Have we had any further indication from the province with respect to what is happening with the property on Bay Street and when it might happen?
Oh, you're muted. Mr. Harris, you're muted.
Through the mayor, Councilor Borneman. No, we've not heard anything. What the last position was that it was up to the MNR to determine where they would like to relocate. The Infrastructure Ontario, they'll find a suitable location, but it's up to the MNR to determine where they would like to relocate. We have a delegation, or requested a delegation at the AMO conference, virtual conference this August. And one of the items on the agenda is to remind the minister that we are interested in the property and we'd like to see the jobs retained within this community. So there's two aspects of the concern. One, that we get a chance to bid on the property or acquire the property, and two, that the jobs don't move out of our region.
Yes. Follow up, Paul? Councilor Borneman?
Yeah, Paul's good. So just to clarify then, Mr. Harris, there is no timeline that's established right now, for M&R for M&RF, I guess, to give any indication what their plan is.
Not that we're aware of. I was previously in contact with the Infrastructure Ontario and different individuals involved, and no one was able to give a commitment. The last position that they had said is they were trying to do a facility analysis with, I assume, other M&R locations, and to see what maybe makes sense in the greater scheme of things as to location. That's what raised the concern about the possibility of them moving out of the area.
Councilor Keith?
Yes, my question is for Mr. Cairns. Two areas of concern, all in the same really location or close to it. On Wabano Road, and also at Wabano and near Wabick, and on Wabick, but you're getting close to Church Street as you make the curve there. I've noticed the pavement has been cut there and it seems to be down. What's happening there?
Yes, through your worship. Actually, today, initially the pavement cuts were done in anticipation of the paving of the second lift of the Wabick Street project to finalize the asphalt lift, and that was proceeding today. So the good news is that those cuts should no longer be an issue, and the paving should have been completed today. I unfortunately wasn't there at the very end of the day, so but I did witness the progress this afternoon, and they were making good progress. So those cuts should no longer be an issue, but that's why they were there.
Good. Councilor McCann?
Yes, thank you. This may be for Mr. Kearns, but perhaps maybe Mr. Harris could answer this as well. And I know people will be asking. So, I mean, it was a bittersweet thing to see St. Joe's come down. There's quite a pile of debris right now. Do we know how long it will be before that debris will be removed? Is there any kind of a plan that we know about at this point?
I'll provide the comment to the extent that I'm familiar. They, as part of the demolition, they were to submit a demolition plan, and they submitted that to the chief building official. So off the top of my head, I don't know the timing. I know they got the building down pretty quickly. But I can speak with Mr. Este tomorrow and let council know if there's any update on a more definite timeline.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
I think part of the process that I've noticed, because I go by there every day, is that they're separating material. So, they've got this really nifty machine that takes breaks down the cement, and actually they can pull the steel out. And they've got a pile of steel, they got a pile of some other material, they got these different piles. So I think what they're doing is they're just cleaning up all these different like materials and putting them in these piles. And then I think my guess is you'll start to see them disappear, because chances are the scrap metal is going to go, it's all going to be worth something, right? So they'll try to get their money, as much money out of it as they can.
And also a comment that they left the chimney standing. Is that something that will come down eventually as well? I know that they left it up there. What kind of a bird was it that they were trying to protect? Were they swallows or something? But
chimney swifts.
Yeah.
Mr. LG, I think, probably has an answer.
Okay.
Through your worship, that's correct. It is chimney swift. As far as I know, the plans are to keep that chimney. Destruction of endangered species habitat is not something that is done lightly. So it's remaining, as far as all knowledge that we have.
Okay, great.
Through the mayor to Councilor McCann, I had a conversation with the contractor that's tearing down the building, and he indicated he had talked the owner into saving the chimney because for a couple of reasons. One, it's at the extremity of the building, so it doesn't really interfere with future construction. He felt it, he told the owner it was pretty stable and not requiring a lot of maintenance. And he also convinced him it would be an aesthetic benefit. If there's condos or there's something there, apartments, people looking out are going to see this chimney. It's a nice feature, and the chimney swifts, etc. So I think he was successful in getting that chimney saved.
Oh, it reminds you a bit too of some of those things in Europe where, you know, they'll, you know, part of a building might be ruined or wrecked or that sort of thing or something, but they'll keep a certain aspect and build new around it. And I think somebody could do something really neat with that old chimney. Yeah. Anyway, any other questions of staff? Nope. Okay. Correspondence, Ms. Johnson.
Yes, Member Garvey, there are 9 items of correspondence that was circulated as part of the agenda. Most are for council's information and have been filed. The first is from the Deputy City Clerk of the City of North Bay. And that is a copy of a letter to the Prime Minister regarding support for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities' request of the federal government to support communities with a minimum $10 billion funding for emergency operational support. And this is on the agenda as it was similar to Council's resolution of June 16th, which was passed on June 16th, Resolution 2020-068. The next 4 items are from the Township of the Archipelago. The first is a request for increased provincial funding for the West Parry Sound Health Centre based on, or taking into account, I should say, seasonal residency and fluctuations in residency to provide for a stable funding and to recognize the actual population that is here at certain times. Again, from the Township of the Archipelago is a copy of a letter written to the President and CEO of the LCBO. It's with concerns that due to the non-profitability of convenience outlets in Woods Bay and Sans Souci within the archipelago, that these convenience outlets may close. And the concerns expressed of consequent increased travel time and cost for the residents to access an LCBO on mainland, going by boat first and then by car, the consequent environmental impact on that, and concerns about what to do with empties. So the request is being made that the LCBO talk to the convenience outlets to see if there's some way that they can continue to provide this service. And this is copied to area municipalities. The next, again from the Township of the Archipelago, is a resolution of support for international and American ratepayers of the archipelago. So the context, or in the context of closure of the US-Canada border for non-essential travel and consequent inability of non-citizen property owners to access their property, the resolution is an affirmation that these non-citizens, seasonal residents are valued contributors to the community. And the resolution goes on to express the hope that COVID-19 pandemic can be controlled to the point where international borders can be safely reopened such that international and American properties can access their properties. And the last from the Township of the Archipelago is support for the town of Parry Sound and the health units initiatives mandating face coverings. The next item is a letter from Andrea McIntyre with concerns about the mandating of face coverings. The next item is from the municipality of Whitestone. It is a copy of a request to the provincial government to financially support rural broadband internet. The 8th item is from Gail McEwen of Almonte Street. This letter is in regards to a concern over a property matter between neighbors. This has been referred to the Director of Public Works and the Bylaw Enforcement Officer for response. And the last item is from Jeremy McDonald, Assistant Staff Sergeant of the West Parry Sound OPP Detachment. And it's the OPP 2020 Q2 report, statistical information for the area wide. And that's just specific to the town of Parry Sound. And those are all the items of correspondence.
Okay, thank you. We don't have any deputations. So we'll go to reports and we'll start with Councillor Burden tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 1 second while I find my note here. Sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, easier said than done. Anyway, just a couple of things to report. On July the 7th, I took part in a monthly meeting of the Downtown Business Association. Under the circumstances, things are going well there. Of course, they're mostly very concerned about their future, understandably so. And I just want to make it clear that I'm going to ask everybody to try your best to help these small businesses out, do business with them whenever you can, try and shop locally. And believe me, they're going to need the help in the future. So let's do what we can to help them out. All of the events that they had planned for this year have been canceled with the exception of the Halloween in the downtown, which will be held on October 31st, if possible, but it's the only thing that's still hanging on as far as events are concerned. On July the 9th, I attended or took part in a teleconference meeting, the monthly meeting of the District Social Services Administration Board. Things are going well there. Most of the people there are still working from their homes and doing a fine job of looking after their clients, and very much appreciate what they're doing. The new CAO has been hired, and congratulations and welcome to Tammy McKenzie, who will be starting on August the 24th in that capacity. Tammy's qualifications, her work background, her personality, all very much impressed the hiring committee and the HR department for DSAB. So looking forward to Tammy doing an outstanding job and being with us hopefully for a long time. Welcome, Tammy. And that is my report.
Thank you. Councillor Borneman.
Well, Your Worship, I've had no meetings in the past week. My report consists of a little bit of an opinion. During the past week, I think I've noticed a significant uptick in the number of people who are wearing masks in the community, and I want to encourage the people to continue that pattern to protect yourselves and others. The numbers in Ontario show that the virus is a long way from being beaten, so it's not time to take the foot off the gas pedal yet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McCann.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, council and staff and public. Short report tonight. On Wednesday, July 8th, along with Councillor Backman, I attended a meeting, and this one was actually in person at the Parry Public Library. The board meeting was to hear a presentation from Marianne Love of ML Consulting. And she brought us up to speed with her presentation and an update on pay equity. And so that's something that we've been doing. And of course, the town of Parry Sound is the library sponsor. So we had help from the town as well with that one. A big note of congratulations goes out to our CEO, Rita Orr, who has been formally invited to moderate a panel session of municipal councillors at an upcoming virtual conference in September. In addition to that, she's been asked to sit on the 8th annual 2020 Northern Lit Awards and to be on the panel as a juror in charge of choosing this year's finalists for nonfiction. So there are 3 books that she is reading, and in her words, she says she's been reading like crazy, and she's very, very happy and excited to be asked to take part in both of these matters. And on behalf of the board and staff, we offer our congratulations to Rita and wish you good luck with these, and thank you for all that you do. We're the little library that could, it seems, as we continue to move forward. Oh, and I did want to remind people to keep an eye on our website, because there are services that you can take advantage of. And as we have a soft reopening, there's lots of information there about when the hours are, and how to come in, and basically what to expect. And really the only other thing I have to report on, of course, is that along with the rest of council, I attended the special meeting last week, which was to deal with the setting forth a bylaw for the mandatory wearing of masks. And as Councillor Borneman had just said, he's noticed an increase in people wearing them. I have too, and I'm glad to see that, and I hope people will continue to do so and to cooperate. And you know, when you do that, you're respecting others, you're showing a concern for other people's health as well as your own. So thank you for your compliance. And that is my report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Backlund.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Tonight I will report on one of the meetings that I attended since our last council meeting on July 14th. I attended the IceCap Communications Committee meeting, and IceCap is a group of partners, municipalities and First Nations that are taking action against climate change in the region, also known as the Integrated Community Energy and Climate Action Plan, along with the Georgian Bay Biosphere area councils and their communities are looking to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions and build resilience by adapting to a changing climate. And so one of the things I'd like to report on how the community can help, we have developed a carbon calculator. It has been developed as an educational tool and as a method for collecting data as part of the climate action strategy. And this would be very useful for the community to participate in. So if you are interested in taking a short survey to help us compile data for this initiative throughout Parry Sound, and feel free to share amongst other municipalities. You can go to gbbr.ca/carbon-calculator. Again, if you go into the Georgian Bay Biosphere website, from the menu, you'll be able to access the carbon calculator survey. And I'm very proud to be a part of this initiative. That was the only meeting that I attended via Zoom. And this week on Thursday, I do have a scheduled Zoom meeting with Park to Park Trail. And that is my report for this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, fellow councilors, staff, and the public. I attended on a one-on-one basis, basically through emails and communication with Acting Staff Sergeant McDonald. It was decided that all the townships would do individual communication rather than a meeting. But the next meeting should be in the new OPP station in October. So I'm sure we'll all look forward to that, as well as prior to that time. I should let you know right now that August the 10th, a new interim Acting Staff Sergeant Carol Dion will be coming to Parry Sound. So that we hope that we wish her well and look forward to meeting her in the future. The stats for the second quarter, April to June 2020, were compared to the stats of last April to June 2019. The violent crime is up some, and that would be in assaults, 12%. Property crime is definitely down 31.8%, and the drugs again are up a double. However, when you look at the number, and the printout is in the agenda package here, you'll see the number goes from 2 to 4. So when you first hear double, you may have to take that back a little bit and think about your numbers. Overall, the West Parry Sound OPP where there was drug seizures, 60% of that was cocaine. So we are seeing a cocaine has been a drug of choice, and we also know Highway 69 is a corridor. West Parry Sound, we saw collisions are down overall 19.7%. The OPP provided us with an analysis of 2019 for impaired driving, over 80 offenses, and the RIDE program. And if one looks at the report, this analysis that they included, it's very detailed, and the graphs clearly show all the areas that were targeted. So I think that is very important to review. And 39% of the persons charged with impaired were from Parry Sound. A real positive note I see here is that the 911 calls, and I've been reporting this for some time, which has been rather discouraging in that the 911 calls, just misdialed calls, just kept rising and rising. However, the OPP established a different sort of screening when they receive these calls. And as of that, we've gone from 369 last year during the quarter to 70. So that's quite a drop. The OPP patrol, the walking patrol, those hours are down a little bit compared to last year. However, I do recognize that there's a lot of things going on right now with pandemic, so we have to keep that in mind. The community service officer, Joe Scally, has continued to do education with people regarding pandemic. And we know just as council how hard it has been to try to clearly communicate in the importance of wearing masks and how we need to conduct ourselves to try to combat this disease. The OPP, also Joe Scally, has been involved in trying to get people involved in volunteer hours and looking at their resumes for those who are interested in maybe signing up, hoping to apply to the OPP down the road. I should also indicate that if I just backtrack, because I think it is important when one looks at the analysis of the impaired driving last year for that whole year. The highest number of offenses seem to again occur in the summer. I guess there's a number of reasons we can figure out why that would be, but I guess in summer people maybe want to be a little freer, but we know this year there should be a real change in that department. So overall, when I looked at the stats and how Parry Sound is doing in comparison to the rest of the West Parry Sound, I think that we should be able to feel confident that right now that the service that we are being provided and having safety seems to be coming into effect on a regular basis. And that's my report.
Okay, thank you. I'll keep my report brief. July 9th was Parry Sound District Social Services Board meeting, which Councillor Burden reported on. July 15th, I made a presentation on behalf of AMO to the Government Standing Committee on Finance and Economic Development. And last week, I was able to have a conversation with the First Nations National Chief, Perry Bellegarde, which was really appreciated. So that's my report. And we will go on with the agenda. So we're going to go to 931. Moved by Councillor Bachman and seconded by Councillor Burden, that the Council for the Town of Parry Sound is hereby approved the draft consolidated financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2019 in Schedule A as attached, and that the 2019 draft financial statements for the Provincial Offences Act in Schedule B be approved as attached, and that the 2019 draft financial statements for administration of land ambulance services in Schedule C be approved as attached. So we'll open it up to discussion, and we have Ms. Bodkin online, and she can answer, along with Ms. Phillips, any questions that anyone might have on the budget. Welcome.
Thanks. Might be on mute.
No, you're on. We can hear you.
On. Okay.
Okay. So do we have any questions? Council Board, Borneman.
I guess this isn't a specific question other than to say we have the auditor here with us tonight. Maybe we can have the Coles Notes 140 character report as to the highlights with respects to changes as to the town's financial status from 2019 or
18.
18, excuse me.
Sure. So there's two, I'm sure you have copies of all the reports in there. One has the financial statement report to council, which just talks about the audit and any past audit adjustments we had. So there's really nothing there that's any of concern with council. So that's the one thing you might want to read, but there's one section in there where we have to highlight any concerns. There was no concerns on our audit this year. There's a clean audit opinion. As far as the town's consolidated financial statements and compared to prior year, so the town basically each year, the last couple years, the town for accounting purposes has created a surplus. Last year was 2.6 million and this year was 3.2 million. Now, with that surplus, if we add back depreciation, because depreciation is a non-cash item, it's you writing off your capital assets. When we do that, you created about 8 million of cash flow, 8 to 9 million of cash flow. And the last couple of years, you've spent almost 8 to 9 million on capital assets. So even though you have that surplus, most of your surpluses, which is similar to other municipalities, goes into your TCAs, your tangible assets. And as far as your balance sheet goes, which it's kind of, it's called the Statement of Financial Position. If we look at all your cash and investments minus your payables, last year you had about 6.5 million of, I call it like a working capital, and this year you're close to 6 million of a working capital. So there hasn't been much change from this year to last year as far as the financials for the town. I always tell the council that this is a moment in time. And if next year you were going to spend like 50 million on roads and sewers, you're really minus 40. So a lot of financial statements is what your capital asset management plan is for the next 5 to 10 years. And that's how you can really tell financially how your town is going. So that's all I had to report. Cole's version.
Thank you. Councillor Keith.
Yes, I think my question has just been answered because it's a capital asset plan that can kind of keep us on track is what I heard, and we need to stay on track and focus that, right?
Yes. I had a couple notes to when I was talking to the manager, senior manager that does the audit with Christine. And one of the things I just want to let you know is that the town hired BDO to do a GST kind of audit, and nothing was found. All the books were great, which there's no fee to do it. It's just to see if we can get some more recoveries for the town. So the accounting was pretty much perfect on the HST. And the only other thing is the town, you have received some modernization funds, and you might want to consider looking into, I've always said this, cybersecurity digital risk, what happened with COVID, more people working from home. So there's more risk that people can hack into things. So I would definitely try to invest in that in the future. And also, just looking and updating your procurement policies and different things like that. So those are more advisory services, nothing to do with the audit, but things that other municipalities are looking into. BDO is sponsoring the AMMO conference this year. And actually we are doing a recorded WebEx. I'm going to be on the WebEx, but we're bringing in stuff to look at broadband for municipalities and smart city program and cybersecurity. So it's like a 20-minute WebEx if anybody wants to watch it.
Great. That's
and you
good.
can email me how I did on camera.
Okay. Councillor McCann.
Yes, thank you. It's refreshing to hear that the books are in good order. I think I would ask, not asking you to compare apples and oranges, but maybe apples and apples. If you take our town, insofar as benchmarking goes, how do we compare in performance and the monies that we have, as you talked about the surplus and how it's kind of spoken for? How would you compare other towns are comparable to what we are? Are we right in the middle? Are we on track? Are we doing better or worse or different?
Well, I can only kind of compare, every town sets their budget, and I'm not saying that, I can't really say your budget is better than another town, because our audit isn't kind of geared that way. It's more that here's the books and records. But I can look at your financial position. There are a lot of people who are in the hole because they've had to spend millions of dollars on TCAs and get a lot of debentures. So you are a town with very little debt, a good, healthy, reserve. And so as long as your assets are taken care of and there's no major repairs coming up, I have seen towns that are like minus 20 million in the hole. I used to do the town of Penetang, and they were like minus 15 million, but then after 5 years, they got back to zero. So because they revitalized their whole downtown and had to do a lot of, it seems to be water and sewer seem to be the biggest thing that can affect your town as far as financial things. So that seems to be a big ticket item.
Well, thank you very much. Good to hear.
Any other questions, comments? No? Okay. I will just add this comment that for those people out there that wonder what the financial situation is for the town, I'm sure this will be posted on the website so that it can be reviewed and that things are in good order, and it's there for you to peruse. So, all right. Anyone opposed to this resolution? Nope, that's carried then. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for being here. Okay, so we'll go to item 911, moved by Councillor Keith and seconded by Councillor Burden. The consent application number B16 2020 TPS Parry Mall Incorporated 70 Joseph Street be supported, subject to the following conditions. 1, any necessary amendment variance to the zoning bylaw be completed to ensure that resultant lots would meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw, which includes setbacks and compliance with section 4.9E of the bylaw 2004-4653. 2, the payment in cash in lieu of parkland dedication fee for a newly created lot. 3, any easements be deeded between the retained and severed lots for access to utilities and vehicular traffic. A blanket easement may be required for reciprocal parking rights. 4, that the application obtain compliance with the Ontario Building Code as it relates to the lot line dividing the structure. Example, construct a firewall. And 5, that separate water sewer services be provided to each of the retained and severed lands. Discussion. Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This would be for Mr. Elgie then. I took 2 questions. I'm looking at the borders drawn, and the mall building, unless I'm not reading it properly, is very close. And we talk about setbacks. Are all of the conditions we're asking for, are they to be met before we allow this to go ahead, or are we allowing this to go ahead in good faith and then there's follow through? So as I said, like, I'm just looking at the picture here, and although I might be misinterpreting it, it seems to me with setbacks, you've got the building is awfully close to the boundary there, but I don't know, maybe that's nothing to be concerned about in this case. I'm certainly for this motion. I think it's we're moving ahead with this, but just curious.
Through your worship, essentially the application would be severing a line right through the mall, so there would be a 0-foot setback in portions of the mall. So that's largely what the zoning variance or relief requires. The way the process works is this is a resolution going to the planning board with requested conditions of consent. The lots don't get created unless the applicant fulfills all the conditions of consent, and they have 12 months to do so. If they do not do those conditions, the consent should fail.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Borneman. Your mute button. No? Okay, all right. Any other questions? Oh, there you're on now.
I don't know if this question is appropriate here or where it gets fit in, but there are a number of applications on tonight's agenda where we're forgoing parkland. And I just wonder, Mr. Elgie, where we end up if that becomes sort of standard procedure. Like, can we keep doing this and end up with where we want to be as a community at some point?
Through your worship, so in this case, we are asking for cash in lieu of parkland rather than parkland itself. On commercial lands, I believe the dedication is only 2%. So if you take a 2% value of the land, so there isn't much property here that I think we would ever want to turn on this site into parkland. So I think in this case, cash in lieu makes a bit of sense. There would be other situations. For instance, a year or two ago on Acorn Ridge, we asked for land and they agreed to give us land in that one because there was no parks in that general area. But in this case, I thought cash in lieu was more appropriate.
Follow-up, Councillor Borneman?
So our standard, going forward, that'll be the criteria, what's available in the neighborhood and how it fits into the community as a whole. We're not setting some sort of, we're not moving away from requesting parkland, taking cash in lieu of parkland.
Through your worship, we are not. I believe it should be a case-by-case basis depending where and what is proposed.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor McCann?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Elgie, just with Councillor Borneman's question, sort of put this in mind. Is the developer still looking to put residential units in his development here?
Through your worship, as far as I know, that is still the plan, and I believe this severance they're hoping they can use to help leverage some funds to finish off that project. But I don't know any of the specifics, to be quite honest with you.
Okay, so the reason I ask, and based on what Councillor Borneman was asking, if you have a development where there are residential units, would we normally push to have more parkland development, some green development? You had just mentioned, and I respect that there's not much there that the town itself could look at doing, but would the developer not have any kind of room on that property to develop some sort of green space for the enjoyment of the people who would be living there? Just a question.
Through your worship, the developer definitely has the room, especially on the back side of the mall. There's quite a bit of green space in between the mall and the train tracks where they could develop that for their tenants if they were so interested in doing so. Last I heard, I believe, and this is going back a couple of years when the residential project was first proposed, they were, I think, doing a lot of bachelor and single unit apartments. So I think they were going more for not so much a family type thing, but I believe they're trying to cater to young professionals or recent retirees who are looking to size down.
So I guess then I'm asking if when we ask for parkland development or cash in lieu, we're talking about property that would be for the benefit of the public, not necessarily for the residents that may be living on the development itself then.
Through your worship, that is correct. If you take the land, it's public land for anybody to use.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay. Anything further on that? No? Okay. Anyone opposed to the resolution? No? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Okay, the next one is 912, and it's moved by Councillor Burden, second by Councillor Borneman. The consent application B17 2020 TPS Gomez 10 Edward Street be supported, subject to the following conditions. 1, a payment of cash in lieu of parkland dedication fees for the newly created lot, and that the applicant be advised that separate water and sewer services are to be provided to each of the retained and severed lots. Any discussion? Councillor McCann.
Very briefly then, Mr. Elgie, is this just a simple lot severance side by side on Edward? I'm looking at the map here. Any particular concerns you have?
Through your worship, that's exactly correct. It's a 1+1 lot creation for residential units. There are no concerns.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Nope. Okay. Anyone opposed to the resolution? No, that's carried. Next, moved by Councillor Keith and seconded by Councillor Backman, that the flag policy attached to Schedule A be hereby approved, effective immediately. Discussion. Councillor Keith?
Yes, I read the policy. I'm just wondering, would it be possible for an organization to request that they just have their flag flown every year at a certain time? Or is that just not possible? Could we have clarification there, please?
Through you, your worship, the way the policy is written, the draft does require organizations to request on an annual basis if they wish to have the flag flown.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Nope. Anyone opposed to the resolution? Nope. Then that's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Borneman, seconded by Councillor McCann. Whereas many of the West Parry Sound Health Center's health center fundraising efforts have been canceled or postponed due to COVID-19. Whereas the need for fundraising continues, whereas the health center, with the assistance of the hospital auxiliary volunteers, began making and distributing masks through the community. Whereas the health center has provided over 150 masks to the town, therefore be resolved that the town of Parry Sound thanks the health center for this initiative in support of the community, and that the town donate $500 to the West Parry Sound Health Center Foundation under the mask program. Any discussion? Councillor Borneman?
Well, I don't know what everybody else is paying for masks or if anybody's buying them, but I think the masks that they've donated are probably worth $500. So I would move that we double that to $1,000. I think it's, you know, they've done great work and have supported a bunch of causes in the community. And I think $1,000 is well worth it.
Do we have a seconder for 1,000? Councillor McCann? Discussion on the $1,000. Okay, anyone opposed to the $1,000? No, then $1,000 it is. I will change this one. Anyone wish to speak to the resolution now as amended? Councillor McCann.
Well, just to highlight a big note of thanks to the volunteers who came together. This was a real grassroots organization that got things rolling, and a lot of people donated their own time putting these things together. I'm sure if I sat down and tried to knit or stitch something together, it would be something to not behold. But thank you so much for all of the work. At times like this, the community always proves itself to be very generous when you've got fundraising underway, and when something like this happens and you see people come together to help one another, it makes you really proud to say you're from this town. So I'm not just saying that to be heard. I think it comes from the heart, and so thank you to all.
Yeah, they've done an absolutely tremendous job. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Bachman?
I guess this is more or less a comment. I just want to make note that the hospital does have a couple fundraising events going on, and one is the annual Moose radiothon coming up this Thursday, as well as there is also a new initiative that they've developed, probably in light of COVID-19 and giving the opportunity for social distancing, but it is in concert with Parry Sound Bikes, and it is a psride.com. And so if people are interested in as well donating because of they can go to that website as well.
Okay, good. Any other questions, comments? Nope. Okay, anyone opposed to the resolution as amended? No, that's carried. Thank you, everyone. Moved by Councillor Keith, second by Councillor Burton. The council authorizes that application be made to the COVID-19 Emergency Support Fund for Heritage Organizations Museum Assistance Program for the Bobby Orr Hall of Fame, and that Clayton Harris be confirmed as the person with signing authority. Discussion. No. Anyone opposed to the resolution? No, that's carried. Item 932, moved by Councillor Borneman, seconded by Councillor McCann. The council approves undertaking a development charge background study using Watson and Associates Economists Limited, Watson, at the estimated cost of $39,570 excluding HST. Any discussion? Councillor McCann.
I guess this would be for Mr. Harris then, just as a point of education for us then, what are we looking for in a study like this? What is it that they're going to tell us that we don't know in terms of putting something together for developers?
Through the mayor, the main purpose of this is to, first of all, identify the amount of growth that we anticipate over the period of time, and different services of different timeframes. It might be 10 years or 20 years. Then identify the growth, and then identify the infrastructure that we require as a town in order to service that growth. It may be capacity issues at the water plant or the sewage treatment plant. And I think, as our auditor mentioned, the biggest concern would be water and sewer infrastructure. I don't suspect we'll be building a second arena and those kinds of things. So it's mainly water and sewer infrastructure, road infrastructure, and then the plants themselves, I suspect, are going to be the larger ticket items. And maybe extending servicing. We've got the Beatty property north of the salt dock. What might we need in place? So we identify those infrastructure needs, determine how much is required to service growth, how much would, and these are terms used in the legislation, how much of that infrastructure that we're going to repair, replace, or build new services and benefits the existing population. And then the costs are shared between the existing population and the future growth on that basis. So it sets out what we expect the development to pay once it's passed. So people looking at developing in Parry Sound know that up front. There's no surprise. And we've identified a lot of useful information that we know. So we're not dealing with just when development comes to town and then we find out we got an issue. It's trying to get ahead of the curve, figuring out what the services we need and then who should pay for it. And the legislation forces a fair amount of equity and fairness, and we just can't put it on the backs of the developers because we'd like to. There's a lot of rigor in the legislation, and the firm that we're using has a lot of experience and is respected by both the development industry and the municipal sector in doing this work.
Yeah, follow up, Councillor McCann.
Yeah, just so how long, what's the timeline for this then? Because this is very interesting and it would be good to have this information to go forward sooner than later, obviously.
Their timeline, according to their proposal, is January of 2021 to have a bylaw in place. That is somewhat dependent on our ability to get them the data, the condition of our infrastructure, and what new infrastructure upgrades might be required to service growth, and then put numbers behind that. But right now, that's the time frame.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other? Councillor Borneman?
I just point out that we don't normally support the idea of sole sourcing studies such as this, but Watson has done a good deal of work for us in the past with good success. And I think that because this is important to move ahead, using them makes a lot of sense. If we were to put this out and take another company, they'd have a lot of catch up to do just to get to where we are right now with Watson.
Yeah, exactly. Any other questions? No? Anyone opposed to the resolution? No, and that's carried. Thank you. Okay, moved by Councillor Borneman, seconded by Councillor Keith. The council directs staff to complete an online application form for the Transport Canada Rail Safety Improvement Program, RSIP, to explore funding opportunities related to the double rail crossing at Isabella Street. discussion? Councillor Backman.
Thank you. I guess my question is for Mr. Cairns. Is there any a timeline noted on this grant application of how long the process is between applying, submitting the application and receiving approval or notification?
Through you, your worship, there is nothing denoted as to a specific timeline. There is a process whereby I believe a transport safety officer is assigned should the project be deemed to be moving forward for consideration. There's a safety officer assigned that would conduct kind of further investigation into the application, and the timelines within the program. It can be up to a 2-year project from the time of approval, but there is no specific deadline for them to issue approval that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Okay, I got a couple of questions for Mr. Kearns, and then I'm going to go to Councillor Borneman and then Councillor McCann. I think Councillor Borneman, you had your hand up? No? Okay, all right. Okay, good enough. So Mr. Cairns, who owns the property where the safety lights, bells, and crossings arms are located?
So that those devices they're located on railway property. Okay. Specifically, so they are actually their devices.
Thank you. And who is responsible for installing and maintaining that equipment?
The railways are responsible for that within their right of way.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McCann.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I had the same questions in mind. Basically, we know that the railway companies are very particular about their own property. Is this? I was looking for a cost. Is there a cost to subscribing to such a study? And what is it that we're going to find? I mean, this has been an ongoing problem. I mean, the geography is not friendly with the. This is just a bad situation, a bad place. What are they going to tell us that we can do that's going to make that any easier than it is right now, short of putting a whole bunch of fill in there and widening the road?
Through your worship, actually, this program will deal specifically with safety improvements within the rail right of way. So this. And maybe as we will recall, back in February, we had a letter and then a subsequent delegation from a couple of residents in the area that had expressed those safety concerns in that area. And at that time, council had asked staff to come back with a report, being more of a fulsome report of the entire area relating to pedestrian and cyclist and motorist safety in the area. So while we haven't formulated the entire report through the entire area, this program gives us an opportunity to access up to 80% funding for those improvements to safety within that rail right of way. And I think that's a particular note in this instance because of the double crossing of both CN and CP tracks. So they won't specifically be commenting on the rest of road safety or pedestrian cyclist safety through that area other than within the railway right of way. But that could prove to be a very valuable addition, especially at 80% funding within that area. So of note, in reading their what qualifies there, what might be road widening, sidewalks, there's a number of criteria that will fit. And they did actually mention even up to and including pedestrian overpasses in some cases. So I'm not saying that that's a viable option in that area, but I think it certainly shows that they're willing to look at any and all opportunities for improvement to safety.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's hope something comes of it, because it was, as we all know, it has been an issue. And I do like the idea of a pedestrian overpass. If that's something that can come together, given the geography there, maybe that's something that will be a viable solution. Who knows? Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Backman?
Just in regards to the application, Mr. Cairns, in supporting documentation, would it be of importance to receive information, include information about the new school being built in the area and the importance of the pedestrian safety and rail safety in that area?
Through your worship, I think it's important to include all the information that we have available, including, you know, and I council did discuss back in February the development of the residential properties in the Salt Dock area and the increase in pedestrian and cyclist traffic. So I think it's going to be important to include, and we certainly will include all the information that we have available.
Yeah, and the French school as well. So, yeah. Okay, any other questions, comments? No? Okay, anyone opposed to the resolution? No, it's carried then. Okay, moved by Councillor McCann, second by Councillor Burden, that bylaw number 2020-7059 being a bylaw to authorize a subdivision amendment agreement regarding phasing with WEH Development Limited, Hall/Thunder Creek, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? I need hands now. Thanks. That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Borneman, second by Councillor McCann, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? Councillor Borneman.
Mr. Mayor, I want to thank the staff. A couple weeks ago, I had made some comments about the status of this. I want to thank Mr. Algie, Mr. Cairns, and Mr. Thompson, Mr. Harris for working through this with the developer and getting us to where we are tonight. It's not easy when you have a subdivision agreement that lies dormant for 15 years and you have a number of people and policies change. With respect to a question for Mr. Algie, you're satisfied that we've done all we can to protect the corporation by moving forward in this fashion tonight?
Through your worship, yes, I am. We had our lawyer review the agreement and he's also satisfied with it. I believe after this, if this agreement, is approved, it will be in a better place tomorrow than it's in today. We're getting a temporary fire turnaround as part of this. We don't have anything today. And as well as if the developer follows through, we'll have some much needed housing provided as well.
Good. Councillor Keith.
Yes, thank you. Now, this question I'm sure is either for Mr. Algie or perhaps Mr. Cairns. I noticed in section 9 of this agreement, when it speaks of should phase 3 not be completed by August 31st, 2025, it talks about the turnaround shall be required to become permanent and assumed by the municipality. I'm just wondering, has there been some examination as to the size of the turnaround, and is there any concern that once that phase is developed in the wintertime, the snow storage, that there will not be any issues? Because that does seem to come up sometimes in subdivisions with these turnarounds. Could somebody advise me, please?
Through your worship, and Mike, please jump in if you'd like to. We don't have a specific design as of right now. Rationale being, the turnaround is intended to be temporary because the ultimate goal is they will develop phase 2 and 3. meaning the final cul-de-sac at the end, which does have a design, would take over at the end of the day. What this clause does, though, is it takes in consideration, well, what if phase 3 does not happen? We do not want a dead end or what they call a hammerhead at the end of the street. So it says within 5 years, then you will have to design it and construct it to the satisfaction of the municipality. That would involve conversations between engineering and public works. And we are holding securities in that regard as well. So that way we do have some leverage in that regard.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Backman?
Just in regards to the turnaround, when you say the satisfaction of the town, would that be then paved? Because I understand it won't initially be paved.
Through your worship, that is correct. Initially, it will not have pavement on it. Reason being, if phase 3 does occur in prompt order, developers aren't keen to pave and put down several lifts of asphalt only to rip it back up. But if it is to become permanent and they don't develop phase 3, yes, I'm sure Public Works would require it to be paved and curbed and essentially able to be assumed by the municipality.
Okay. Follow up, yeah.
My question is for you, Mr. Algie. In regards to the pond, can you please speak to the, I guess, the design or the style of pond? I know there is a pond upon the entrance of that subdivision. Would it be similar?
Through your worship, right now the pond has a bit of flexibility to it. One option could be, yes, they develop in a very similar manner to the existing one, which would be fenced in to avoid people falling in or any liability issues. Through the pre-consultation engagement, another option was if they don't want to do a fence, they can do 5-to-1 slopes to ensure that it's a very, very shallow entry into it to also reduce liability. So the developer does have some leeway in that regard, but ultimately it would have to be to the town's satisfaction, and Public Works and the developer would be working closely together on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? No? Okay. Anyone opposed to the passing of the bylaw? No? Okay, it's carried. Moved by Councillor Backman, second by Councillor Keith, that bylaw number 2020-7060 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2004-4653, the zoning bylaw as amended for 9 Church Street, Matt Ryan for Oleg Gromov, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members of having the second and third readings. That's carried. Moved by Councillor Keith, second by Councillor Backman, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Discussion. Councillor Keith?
Yes, maybe Mr. Algie, you could tell the public what the change is since the last time this was came forth to council. What are the changes that the developer is willing to compromise on?
Through your worship, there have not been substantial changes since the public meeting. Originally, they required 18 meters in height. They brought it down to 16.2, I believe. So that does make a bit of a difference. That's a good fraction of a story down. Where most of the changes did occur is when they pre-consulted with staff, the design was much different than where it is today. It was much more imposing upon the street line because it's a larger vertical face. So we requested they start stepping back the upper floors to provide a bit more pedestrian scale. So there was a lot of back and forth at that point, and the applicant early in the stages before it was circulated, they basically switched their design to provide more of a yard to the northern property than to the southern vacant parking lot to provide a bit more of a buffer in that regard.
Okay. Anything further? Councillor Borneman?
Mr. LG, I take it that stormwater controls and whatnot will be addressed later with a site plan agreement, should this go forward?
That is correct. That would be a requirement of the site plan approval process, as well as any water and sewer connections.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything further? Anyone opposed to the passing of the bylaw? No, that's carried. Moved by Councillor Borneman, seconded by Councillor McCann, that bylaw number 2020-7061, being a bylaw to govern and regulate the proceedings of council of the Corporation of the Town of Parry Sound and its boards and committees, where applicable, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Borneman. That the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? Anyone opposed to the passing of the bylaw? No, that's carried. Moved by Councillor McCann, seconded by Councillor Burton. Whereas the province of Ontario's declared state of emergency is scheduled to end on July 22nd, 2020. And whereas COVID-19 continues to exist as a declared worldwide pandemic. And whereas Bill 197, the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Act 2020, which if passed into law will expand the opportunity for municipal councils, local boards, and their committees to meet electronically. And whereas in anticipation of Bill 197 passing, Council passed bylaw 2020-7061, permitting by means of resolution certain expanded terms of electronic participation at meetings of council, local boards, and its committees. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council for the Corporation of Town of Parry Sound extends until October 31st, 2020, the terms of electronic participation at meetings of council, local boards, or committees of either of them per the following. A, electronic participation counts towards quorum. B, electronic participants are permitted to vote. And C, electronic participation is permitted in a meeting closed to the public. Discussion. Anyone opposed to the resolution then? No, that's carried. Okay. Moved by Councillor Bachman, second by Councillor Burton, that bylaw number 2020-7062, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement with Call to Recycle for the management of used consumer type portable battery recycling, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Councillor McCann, second by Councillor Borneman, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? Councillor McCann.
Thank you. This would be for Mr. Cairns. Up until now, who has been handling this for us? Because I know that batteries can be left at the transfer station on McFarland as far as hazardous waste goes, or is this considered hazardous waste, or is it just battery recycling?
Through your worship. Well, to start, Stewardship Ontario was responsible for the management of various types of waste in the past. The tire program transferred responsibility to a producer responsibility framework first, and batteries are the second material to follow suit. So prior to this, Stewardship Ontario was responsible for it. We used our hazardous waste hauler was actually the one receiving the batteries. Actually, the public probably won't see any changes at all, other than we can now accept rechargeable type batteries. So that's something new in this program, which is good. It further diverts from disposal and allows for more recycling. So this is part of the whole framework that the province is moving towards, the Circular Economy and Resource Recovery Act, and moving to producer responsibility organizations. So essentially the people that make the batteries are ultimately responsible, and Call to Recycle is the association that's handling that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councillor Keith.
Yes, I'm wondering, Mr. Cairns, are there any stipulations, for example, when the producer is responsible, are there any stipulations as to whether or not batteries, et cetera, would not be picked up in the winter, and rather there's only X number of months that they pick up, and then the rest of the time we're going to have to store? Has there been any discussion about that?
Through your worship, actually, when these programs are transitioning over, the legislation has some caveats in it that they can't reduce service levels, essentially. So the producer organizations that are taking these over aren't allowed to reduce service levels to municipalities, essentially. So we don't anticipate that there'll be any. There may be some odd circumstances that come up as with any other program, but certainly there is nothing anticipated of that nature.
Yes, Councillor Keith, follow up.
Yes, I thought that the wintertime, maybe hazardous waste we weren't collecting. So does that mean that there will be an area where this would be stored if that's the case?
Through your worship, I believe we've gone to year-round collection now. That was an agreement with all the surrounding municipalities, and I know from my former position, we were part of those discussions in offering it year-round, as it's a pretty important service to have. The other thing to note, I guess, with Call to Recycle in particular, I've dealt with them in a past career as well, and you can actually use Purelator as a shipping agent to them as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be picked up by. So they have some other transportation methods in place, should they experience an issue.
Okay. Anyone else? No? Anyone opposed to the passing of the bylaw? No, that's carried then. Okay, moved by Councillor McCann, seconded by Councillor Borneman, that bylaw number 2020-7063, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? It's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Borneman, seconded by Councillor McCann, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Anyone opposed to the passing of the bylaw? No, so that's carried. Okay, so prior to adjourning, I'd like to offer the following information to the public regarding the next council meeting. The next regular meeting of council for the town of Parry Sound is scheduled for Tuesday, August the 11th, 2020 at 7 p.m. This meeting will be held via Zoom video conferencing and will be live streamed and recorded. All regular council meetings are held at 7 p.m. on the first and third Tuesday of each month, except January and August, where only one regular meeting is scheduled. The council meeting schedule, notices of special council meetings, complete agendas and minutes, and instructions on accessing live streamed and recorded council meetings are all posted on the town's website. Go to www.parrysound.ca under news and public notices. Your TV airs council meetings on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. following a regular council meeting. For Cogeco listings, contact www.yourtv.tv. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night. Take care.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
2.